Boy, it's been such a week with a lot of
There we
good
go.
articles that are looking back and looking forward. And the combination of the two always puts a good perspective on things for me. Um, and this one was a little, out there, not something
Mm,
we normally see. Particularly, I don't think of Jamie Dimon wanting
right.
to, like, it's his mission to stabilize the middle class. Maybe Warren Buffett, because certainly he's the persona of the middle class in his little Midwestern house. But Musk and Dimon, it was good to hear that they're aware our country suffers if the middle class suffers, and
Yeah.
that it's a part of their vision to make sure that's stabilized. We'll see what their actions support the article, but
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
good article.
I know this resonated with you, and I'm sure a lot of people, because as you're saying, yeah, that American dream is very much about the middle class, and you've talked before about the middle class being squeezed out. As you keep observing things, as we keep looking at real estate and other areas of the economy, and as you're saying, it's nice to see beyond politicians spouting whatever that means to them as the American dream, actual business leaders saying something and realizing how important that middle class is to them as well and the rest of the economy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The middle in
yeah,
general, even social middles. I mean, yeah, it's all being squeezed.
yeah. Well, let me read this a little bit. If you want me to stop, just let me know, but I'll speed through it. CEOs like Jamie Dimon, Warren Buffett, and Elon Musk want the government to fight inequality and reignite the American dream. JP Morgan, so these are the takeaways. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon urged Washington to boost the economy. His proposals include investing in American industry, teaching students workplace skills, and expanding the earned income tax credit. CEOs of Apple, Tesla, and other major companies have proposed industrial policy and reducing income inequality. So he's not alone. Corporations have long wanted the U.S. government to just get out of the way. Now, some of the biggest CEOs want it to lead. In his annual letter to shareholders last week, Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, called the U.S. government the, quote, silent partner of the world's largest bank, joining Warren Buffett, CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, and Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, who've either affirmed the benevolent role the U.S. government can play in shaping the economy or benefited from its policies. Forecasting storm clouds ahead, Dimon wants the government to drive economic growth by subsidizing industry, investing in the workforce, and reducing income inequality. Following in Buffett's footsteps, Dimon said JP Morgan owes its business success to the, quote, extraordinary conditions our country creates for economic growth. The language harkens back to the liberal consensus that lasted roughly from end of the Second World War to the 1970s, in which Democrats and Republicans largely agreed that the federal government should carry on the New Deal tradition of government-led growth and social welfare. Though the U.S. today has not just come off a world war, the country is battling sluggish growth, high inflation, and persistent labor shortages. To address these contemporary problems, policy should precede politics and be based on facts, analysis, and expertise, Dimon said. Government can lead industry. To improve American competitiveness and reestablish the American promise of equal access to opportunity for all, Dimon proposed the U.S. government develop a deliberate industrial policy that would drive growth and protect national security. He cited Biden's Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS Act as indirect policies, which provide specific incentives for electric vehicles, semiconductors, rare earths, and alternative energy sources. Dimon argued industrial policy would counter unfair economic competition from China, whose subsidies and economic dominance could disrupt access to vital products and materials. This growth strategy has historical precedent. When the U.S. was engaged in the Cold War race for economic, technological, and geopolitical dominance with the Soviet Union, President Dwight Eisenhower created DARPA to streamline research and development of technology in the Department of Defense and NASA to intensify civilian space exploration and research, according to the Eisenhower Memorial Commission. These investments gave us innovations like the internet and GPS, without which big tech companies would not exist. Notably, just as Biden's infrastructure law has flushed the economy with cash for roads, bridges, and good-paying jobs, the Eisenhower administration invested billions into the interstate highway system we use today. Similarly, renewable energy is a growing domain of geopolitical economic competition. Elon Musk has called for a carbon tax to move the country and world away from fossil fuels to alternative energy sources like solar. His businesses like Tesla and SpaceX have received billions of dollars in government contracts and tax credits. Though the CEO has criticized government regulation and subsidies, even those from Biden's infrastructure law that would go to electric vehicle manufacturers. Akin to Musk, Dimon said he didn't want the government to micromanage industry, believing Adam Smith's invisible hand still prevails. Rather, the scope of industrial policy should come with very strict limitations on political interference and related comprehensive policy around factors like permitting requirements to promote investment and allow infrastructure to be built. Reducing inequality through job training and a living wage was and is good for the economy. Beyond using the government to directly embolden American industry, Dimon told investors greater equality of opportunity would boost economic growth. Fixing income inequality will reignite the American dream, he told shareholders. For Dimon, that begins with jobs, citing that there are 10.8 million job openings and only 5.9 million unemployed Americans. Dimon said policy should help high schools and community colleges work with local businesses to create specific skills training programs, internships, and apprenticeships that prepare graduating students to be job ready. For years, CEOs like Musk and Apple's Tim Cook have said colleges fail to teach skills for today's job market, and their companies hire for skills, not degrees. Recently, some states have dropped college degree requirements for government jobs, which former President Barack Obama has said reduces barriers to good-paying jobs. These pushes to reduce the workforce mirror the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, better known as the GI Bill, which provided veterans with funds for college education to prevent mass unemployment when the troops returned after the Second World War, finding higher education to be no longer a luxury but a necessity in a rapidly changing economy. President Lyndon Johnson pushed for the Higher Education Act of 1965 to increase federal research funding and expand access to higher education through financial aid. Though demographic shifts mean the U.S. now has too few workers rather than too many, Dimon said, work skills training has never been needed more. Last of all, Dimon urged the government to provide more income to lower-paid workers. He suggested expanding the Earned Income Tax Credit, a tax refund that allows lower-income working individuals and families to keep more of their earned income. Dimon even proposed converting EITC into a negative income payroll tax paid monthly, bringing to life an idea President Richard Nixon, a Republican, conceived and abandoned at the tail end of the liberal consensus. Nonetheless, the high income tax rates of the post-war era financed redistributive programs like Social Security, which Lyndon Johnson expanded to include health care with the Medicare and Medicaid Act of 1965 as part of his war on poverty. Dimon's proposal of negative income tax follows the growing popularity of universal basic income, guaranteeing a minimum standard of living for every American, which Musk said the country obviously needed. Buffett has also touted expanding EITC, coupled with raising income taxes on the wealthiest Americans to reduce inequality. Dimon didn't mention tax policy in his letter, but insisted J.P. Morgan should and does pay its fair share in taxes, noting they've paid $43 billion in U.S. federal, state, and local taxes in the last 10 years. Dimon insisted that expanding EITC would do more than anything else to lift up lower-income neighborhoods, and that additional income would go right back into the economy. These government policies would help business, he said, as shareholder value can be built only if you maintain a healthy and vibrant company, which means doing a good job of taking care of your customers, employees, and communities. In other words, stakeholders. We require a 21st century government, Dimon said, but these ideas of his and other CEOs have their roots in a century earlier. All right.
A century earlier. What a way to end. Gosh, a century earlier means that, today's century means negotiating and compromising is weak.
Yeah.
And that's what's lost, and that's why our government is less effective than it was. And even the policy with good intention is not well crafted because the other side isn't coming to the table to actually craft something that is somewhere in the middle. Again, it's the lost middle. I love this conversation. I love the topic. I love that they're getting specific I'd like some of them to go a little further, but again, that's a compromise. I expect them to be conservative as CEOs of corporations trying to make money.
Yeah.
Government
Right.
comes in, brings some balance. That's
Right.
called a functioning system, man.
Yeah.
So I hope they speak up more about this and we start seeing more of this in headlines. It's definitely why we
Mm-mm.
wanted to highlight it.
Yeah.
Um, and support the middle. Gosh, that's going to be my new
Yeah.
policy.
Right. And a little tap on our shoulder, but yes, and in that way, support real estate and more wealth and opportunities for people. Yeah.
Yeah, personal financial stability comes through real estate. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
With some bad math, when we just ended out on that 100 years, I was like, oh wow, that's kind of getting towards a Great Depression. How much more do we need to?
God.
How much more do we need to deal with here before change happens? I think we've had a lot of change. I hope that was enough, and we can move on, like you're saying,
It's just that
and work
pendulum.
together.
The hope
Yeah.
is always, where are we at with the swing? We're very liberal in policy for a really long time.
Yeah.
Tax rates were super crazy. So we just swung so far to the other side. We have had 40 years of conservative policy, and maybe 20 years of it would have been healthy and brought some balance to the previous 30 years of liberal
Mm-hmm.
policy. But we've
Right.
swung way too far, and the biggest concern is that currently where we're at, they're so empowered, they're trying to eliminate democracy and make their policy a single policy across the board. Um,
Yeah.
this article resonates, and initially when I saw this, immediately made me think of the person who stated it best, and that was Elizabeth Warren, that these companies are only successful because of the environment that has been created, the roads that have been built, the fire and police that are established and paid for by
Yeah.
government, and taxes that you pay. They could not have these successes without all the systems in the government that
Yeah.
establish and manages them. So
Yeah.
stop trying to undermine it and find
Right.
compromise. So maybe a little
Well.
off the topic of just real estate, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
It all
This is
relates.
all good. This is all good stuff. And you said it. I think it was last week. I don't know. We're on a drive or something, and you're like, government is expensive.
It's
and,
inefficient. And
yeah,
it's completely
by
inefficient.
design in some ways.
Yeah, because
unfortunately.
it doesn't compromise. Again, the balance, right? Government will make 100% people safe. That's their goal and their vision, because they don't want liability. And why would they say their policy is anything less than protecting 100%? So it's going to be costly and inefficient. Where corporations
Right.
will take more chances, take a few more risks.
Right.
And that could hurt some people. How far should they
Right.
go?
But as you're saying, that's that marriage we need.
It's the balance. It's completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. I like that. Just a couple things. When he started talking about training, and it's like, gosh, Germany's ahead of us on stuff like that when it comes to apprenticeships and job training. I just read an article, I think, saying that community college attendance is down like some crazy amount because why? It's not really addressing what's needed for jobs and
It's
improvement.
not. They're not communicating. Right. They're not communicating with corporations where they're the next step in the process. Definitely the case. And what we're seeing on the other side of the aisle now is that they recognize that people can't get to the success they want to accomplish the American dream, and that's what this article kind of ends with. But they're just saying, fine, these people are victims. Let's just hand it to them and give them every protection against people who have things. That's not the way, man. The way is
Right.
create the paths to success. Don't
Right.
just proclaim victimhood and hand things out.
Yep. All right. Well, there it is, the new American dream. Let's hope it starts again.